You know, sometimes it really does feel like there aren't enough days in the week to review all the things I want to, and I know you guys want me to review. I just think I've got on top of it, then something else comes along and the priorities change. Then this happens. A top secret launch of a new gun, and I am sworn to secrecy again. All will be revealed next week, next Friday in fact, and it will be the exclusive worldwide launch pretty much right here on AAR. It is so secret and such a specifically timed launch that next week's programme won't go out at the usual 7 AM GMT. It will in fact be delayed to 1 PM GMT to coincide with the official launch date and time. Ooh, and I'm really excited. I think the word is stoked. You won't want to miss it, that's for sure. I can't tell you much more, other than it isn't in the thousands of pounds. And I can give you 3 letters. B, S and A. Enough of that, on to this week's review. Hen's teeth, rocking horse manure, needle in a haystack are some of the phrases that fit my difficulty in obtaining this week's gun to review. Well,
appearing out of the mist of the dark forest like a knight on a white charger.
It was a white Mazda, actually.
Appears our knight in shining armour.
Well, Keith in some camo gear, but you get the drift. It is the Enfield SMLE Mk3 Co2 rifle. Yes, hello, and welcome to a rather smoky AAR On Air, and yes, it's here, finally, the much sought after and long awaited Enfield SMLE, or Smelly Smiley Mk3 Replica CO2 rifle. Whew. That's a mouthful, isn't it? And no doubt you guys will want a walk around, some stats, and some testing. But first of all, I'm pretty sure you'll be wanting a bit of a history lesson, and who am I to disappoint? I really don't think you can get much more iconic than this particular rifle. There have been many variations since its inception in 1895, with in excess of 17 million of these things being made in one version or another. It has been used in so many theatres of war, including the First, Second, Korean Wars, and of course many, many more. This particular version is the SMLE Mk3. SMLE stands for Short Magazine Enfield. This actually means short rifle. Magazine fed and fitted. James Paris Lee designed bolt-action system on it, and it was made in the Royal Small Arms Factory north of London in Enfield. Incidentally, they were also made in several other factories, one of which was the Birmingham Small Arms Company. It's quite ironic also that even though this was designed and fitted with a removable 10-round magazine, most military forces of the day didn't see a removable magazine as an advantage and preferred to supply their troops with loose rounds and stripper clips. And the only time the troops were issued with a spare magazine was in case the magazine became detached and lost. Even with this practice of not using preloaded spare magazines, it was possible to complete rapid fire with well-trained troops. This became known as the Mad Minute, firing 20 to 30 aimed rounds in 60 seconds. So efficient was that bolt action that one particular sergeant instructor, Snoxall, I think I got that right, actually achieved 38 rounds into a 12-inch target over 300 yards in 60 seconds. It was even mistaken by German troops attacking such trained troops as machine gun fire and successfully repelled those attacks. The ammunition was the .303 caliber and had an effective range of over 500 yards and even up to 3,000 yards. 1,000 yards was normally its stretched maximum. As was usual, it was also fitted with a bayonet for close quarters work. During the theatres of war already mentioned, several of the Mark IIIs were modified to be used by snipers. Many were also modified to take .22 caliber rounds for training of cadets and troops. This naturally would keep the cost down of the rounds and helped with the teaching of firearms safety and indeed all aspects of shooting. It would be quite easy to become lost in the history of this particular rifle and write several books. Needless to say, this has played a major part in the world's conflicts, and many of the original guns are still around and in full working order, which surely is a testament to the design and build quality of these rifles. Let's look a little closer at this CO2 version, shall we? Stats first. Overall length is around 1135 millimeters, which is pretty close to the original's 1132. It tops the scales at 3.633 kilograms, with the original being around 3.96 kilograms. So again, pretty close and realistic. Naturally, this doesn't have the 303 rounds, but has 4.5mm BBs and will hold 15 rounds, and has a single 12-gram CO2 capsule, which should easily be good for between 30 and 40 shots. This is made of wood, real wood, and metal to obtain those realistic weights and that realistic feel. The amount of wood does seem excessive by modern gun standards, as we've become so used to the open and bare barrel look to a gun, rather than this hidden in timber style. Let's start from the front, shall we? Beautiful attention to detail with the fittings for the bayonet, protection for the front open sights, and the imitation larger bore barrel effect. The whole of this front section is metal and has traditional screws rather than being spoilt with Phillips heads or the like. There is a swivel for a strap at this point, which is repeated again further down the outside of the barrel. That wood carries all the way down the rifle and is made up of two pieces, a top and a bottom. This has an additional metal strap, as we've said, partway down, and sling attachment point. This has a more original strap attached to it by its owner, who has also given this a bit of a distressed feel to it. Moving further down, we come to more ears, which are there to protect the rear sights, which are a pop-up type for elevation. There is, however, no windage evident because this was removed from the original as it was decided it wasn't needed. The original would have been a wind-up adjustment, but on this version it's been changed to a simple sprung-loaded push and move. Further back still, more wood, and then the main bolt section, which is strippable, apparently. But I'm not going to do that because, as I've said, this isn't mine. Again, a fair amount of attention to detail has been paid here to give a feel of the loading clip slide position. It shows a cutaway, but the original would have had more of a groove guide on either side rather than a straight cutaway. The real attention to detail is that bolt itself, because it is a pop open and is somewhat sprung loaded, and then the cocking was achieved on a SMLE or SMLE, as they were affectionately called, on the push forward part of the cocking action. At first, it does feel a little strange, especially when I'm trying to do it left-handed, and requires a little practice to get to grips with the overall action. I can only imagine how much effort was needed to do the mad minute. The safety is also pretty historically accurate and is a pull back and push forward item. To push forward is to put it into fire. This could easily be done with your thumb. If the safety is on, it will also prevent you from cocking the bolt action. The trigger is a single action non-adjustable as per the genuine item, and it also has the magazine release in front of the trigger, which was often caught accidentally when the gun recoiled and finished up with the magazine and all its contents on the floor, and a pretty useless empty gun. This does release the magazine and then reveals the CO2 and BB section. You'll need to lift the bolt on the gun first. Once this is out, there is a heavy-duty button to press on the side, and the whole of the magazine slides off at a strange 45-degree angle. It does feel heavy and quality finished. Once off, the CO2 is visible, and it is very easily accessible, and you simply drop in your 12 gram CO2 and tighten with the hex key. Carefully, and again at 45 degrees, return the cover on a sliding action until it locks home. Turning over, you can then see where the BB loading point is. Pull down on the locking spring and drop in your 15 rounds through the top. Once they're all in place, then carefully release the spring and you're ready to return the magazine back to the rifle. The secret here is to keep it tight in front of the trigger guard, that's it, until it locks itself home. Then push the bolt forward and you're ready to go. To finish off the walk around, we go back to the solid wooden stock with a brass butt piece with original style screw heads with an opening to keep the oil and pull through for maintenance of the rifle. On the underside there is the third swivel for the carry strap. Another historically interesting point around that strap is that some soldiers on the Northern Ireland tours would have only one end of the strap attached to the gun and the other tight around their wrists. The reason they would do that was to prevent anyone from taking the gun and using it against themselves. Overall then, this really is a nice piece of kit to use or simply hang on the wall. So what about power levels then? Well, this is definitely not going to be 303 power. I feel this is more of a replica for ownership pleasure that also fires more than anything else, but it needs putting over the chrono, so here we go. And it saw 460 feet per second using standard 5.37 grain BBs, which equates to 2.52 foot-pounds or 3.42 joules, which is about what I expected. Target work then. Again, with something as such as this, it's always difficult to decide what distance to shoot out at. 10 metres? Maybe that's a little too short for a rifle. 20 to 30 metres, maybe it's a bit too far for a lower powered CO2 replica. So how about 15 metres? But you know what? Tin cans. This isn't a serious target rifle. It's a wall hanger, like we've already said, that you can also have some fun with. You know what? Good enough. Using open sights and a half-blind old git shooting it, as I said, I feel this is more of a replica that will fire something and is ideally more for plinking than target work. Price-wise, I believe it's somewhere around the £400 UK price, which may also be a little rich for some people who think this is simply a CO2 plinker. But it's more than that. It's a replica, and a pretty close one at that. It is made of real wood and has weight and feel to it. It's a bit of history, and I feel it will appeal to quite a few people. I've seen the faux wood on some replicas, and don't get me wrong, they are pretty good. It does keep the price down, but it does somehow take the edge off them as well. And I'm glad they've used the real thing on this Lee Enfield. I started out by saying it's iconic, and I'll finish by saying the same. It really is history in your hands. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little look back in time. If you have, please, as usual, give us the old thumbs up, subscribe, hit the alarm bell, and carry on with your thoughts on these forums and platforms. Now, don't forget, next week the review and official launch will be right here, but at 1 PM GMT. And as much as we know all about it, we need to let the other guys catch up. That's it from me. Stay safe and shoot safe, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.